in the time that it took for me to be introduced, walk across this stage, turn to address you, and begin speaking. One woman in the United States has been sexually assaulted. That amounts to almost 300,000 victims of sexual assault or rape each year, not including the silent incidents that go unreported around the world. When the attack is over, each victim is left to cope with what can be a lifetime of trauma. I know this because I was one of them. I want to ask you, does fear of violence or fear of being victimized, or any fear for that matter, impact you in a way that prevents you from living your best life? Take a moment. Several years ago, I would have said no. I lived in this cocoon fulfilling my childhood dream of becoming the next prima ballerina. And when I was 19, I met a man that made me feel how falling in love could be magic. Until the day that he lost it and violently sexually attacked me. With each strike, I was hit with hard truth. This was the real him. You know, I tried to process what happened knowing that violence is not love, and when having to go to the police for a restraining order, they decided to charge him and ask me to testify as a witness. My first reaction was no way. I mean, I felt so humiliated just thinking of having to recount what he did to me. Even though I knew it wasn't my fault, I just wanted so badly to pretend like it never happened and move on with my life. But deep down, I knew that if I didn't help the police, then I would be a part of putting the next woman's life at risk. And that was not something that I could live with. So, I agreed to testify. And when I made that choice, I learned that the right decision in life is usually going to be the tougher one. Now, trying to cope with the negativity and just depression that came with trauma, I headed back to where I had always felt safe, the dance studio. Only the place that once made me feel just so alive and so creative, it made me feel sick. So then I tried fitness, yoga, meditation, creative writing therapy, anything to distract me, and nothing worked. So I was either going to continue spiraling down or find a way to survive the aftermath and stop living the role of the victim. And then one day, I discovered something that helped, and it was self-defense. Specifically, Krav Maga, which is the hand-to-hand combat system of the Israeli Defense Forces. Learning the defenses that could have protected me during the attack allowed me to feel this sense of empowerment, because for the first time I thought, attack your attack back. And before I knew it, I was on a plane to Israel to find out, was it possible for a woman to learn how to defend herself? In Israel, I was the only woman and the youngest participant in a course of 30 men. And just my luck, the first rule was to spar. I mean, for those of you that don't know, sparring is just fighting and going at it, and I was terrified. You know, my partner, he was so much more aggressive, so much more experienced, and just pummeling me with a sea of quick targeted combatives. And I remember being there with my arms up and trying to block and trying to throw out these random strikes, really hoping that something would land. But he had this one persistent roundhouse kick that kept on getting in, and every time it did, it would literally shake me to my core. And it wasn't until I told myself, enough. Stop focusing on the overwhelming impact of his kick and just focus on kicking that leg back. So as soon as I saw that knee come up, I went for it. And he dropped and didn't get up because his shin broke. Yeah, so all of a sudden the room goes silent. Everybody turns at me in shock. I'm equally shocked thinking, oh my God, did I just really do that with my body? You know, it was like one of the craziest moments I've had where on one hand I felt horrible, like really bad, but on the other hand it's like, take a bow, like, you know, like the best dance performance like of my life. And what drove that was empowerment, because, you know, I was earning respect as a woman on the mat, and I had my answer. Yes, a woman can defend herself. And that moment drove me to learn everything I could about self-defense. I went around the world to work with as many military personnel, law enforcement officials, security specialists, and martial arts experts that I could. And the whole time I would compare what I was being shown to my personal attack. I asked myself, would this concept have saved my life? And that question became the filter for what I chose to retain. I immediately began adapting survival concepts to reflect who I was as a woman, while synthesizing the experiences into these models of simple survival tactics for myself. When I recognized how much of combat is psychological, I became so curious to know what is the neurological reaction to fear. And one of my first models addresses our cognitive reaction to the threat or act of violence and includes effective training adaptations for the street. But before I continue, it's important that we all understand that when we are confronted with a threat, our mind tries to go through phases as quickly as possible, and it's simply just seeing the threat, analyzing it, thinking about what to do, and then actually doing it. My problem in my situation was that I felt paralyzed. Have any of you ever experienced freezing in the face of danger? Did you know that this happens to everybody? In fact, it happens twice. The first time happens in the time that it takes for our minds to think about what to do. And then once we get past that, the second time happens in the time that it takes for our minds and our bodies to connect. So we have to get past the obstacles of freezing in order to execute self-defense. And doing so isn't easy, but a faster reaction can be trained. And here's how. I call it the race reaction model, because we have phase 1 and we have R, which stands for recognize. We must recognize the threat. If you develop situational awareness, you'll see that you'll be able to detect when something is off or out of place faster. Then, in stage 2, we have A, and it stands for analyze. We must analyze the threat that was recognized. Now, the more that you train in self-defense, the more tactical you will become. For example, I immediately look at somebody's hands to determine if they are armed or not. Right off the bat, it's going to categorize the situation and simplify it so that I have a faster reaction through that phase. Then we have phase 3, and we have C, which stands for compose or create a survival reaction. And this is where your mind's computer will literally go into its past to think of experiences and draw defenses, and also it includes training at present, to come up with a survival strategy that will ensure your future survival. And then finally, we have phase 4, and we have E, which stands for execute. You must physically execute your defense. And that's where the hours on the mat to build efficient and effective muscle memory matter. So here we are, learning how to race our reaction. But I took it one step further. After every single training session, I would lie down, usually covered in ice packs, with my eyes closed, and I would use the power of my imagination to visualize my defensive reactions from best to worst case scenario, so that I could anchor the concepts in my mind through adaptation, but also ingrain fake, real experiences that could save my life. And from there, I learned how to develop an authentic survival mindset for the street that would overpower my personal limitations. And that had a huge and profound impact on the method that I was about to develop. Now, I just want to take a moment here and say that, during this time in my life, I was able to successfully graduate from college, and I was working as a hand-to-hand combat instructor in the United States. And while I appeared to be functional and healed in society, I wasn't. I was totally disconnected. I had become one of the classic cases of absorbing all of the negatives of self-defense. I was so much more aggressive. I was always paranoid. It just affected who I was, my sense of self-worth, my femininity, and at the end, I was left with absolutely no capacity to trust anyone. And it wasn't during my lowest moment that I finally came to ask myself this question. What is the point of learning and now teaching self-defense if I have nothing to protect? And then it clicked. I finally realized what real self-defense is. It wasn't only about how well I can disarm a gun or how fast I can take someone down. It was about training to let my emotional guard down so that I could be present to create and live and experience the life that I wanted to live. From that moment, I redefined self-defense as having the ability to create, live, and protect a life that I love, and that I can do it by attacking life before life attacks me. Self-defense should be the art of creating and protecting your life. When I shared this with other women, this new physical and emotional practice of self-defense, I watched them transform the same way I did, and it was mesmerizing. I called it the Soteria Method, after Soteria, the goddess of safety, because using Soteria, women no longer have to be victims that they are labeled. We can all choose to be survivors that thrive. You know, whether I'm working with a woman who has never felt that she was in danger or a woman who is overcoming trauma, every single woman can find her inner Soteria with this approach to self-defense. And when they do, it has a very real and profound impact. You know, I have a student who told me how the method gave her the courage to try stand-up comedy, a dream that she had for years. Or parents who now see their daughter empowered and no longer suicidal after experiencing a sexual assault. Or a student that shares a story about using a simple finger manipulation technique to defend herself against a rape attack. You know, whether you are made a victim by somebody else or a victim of your own design, you have a choice. You can choose to prepare a positive reaction that will allow you to turn any negative situation into the reason that you need to move forward. At first, my attack was the reality that motivated my training. And today, it's the source of a new purpose, helping others. You know, I bet you wouldn't guess, but I still wake up every single morning scared. You have no idea. But now I have a dream and I have purpose because I have self-defense. I have my survival stance. And now my base of integrity for the woman I want to be. I can block and counter an active attack, like I can block and counter a negative thought. I have muscle memory for technical consistency, so that I remain a woman of my word no matter how difficult. But I will break my angles, so that nobody can get behind me or hold me back. I will strike to disrupt the attacker's thought process. A strategic concept that I can rely on and leverage. I am a weapon of combatives. Yet I'm vulnerable. Through self-defense, you can create your life to defend your dreams. Thank you.